Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is LaDaunt and I have my friends here with me today. Hello everyone. Leslie, Sarah, Ria, and Ashley. And what we will be doing today is discussing what teen show we think is the show of the generation. We're basically going to be debating. Each one of us has a different show and we're just going to die on this hill of which one we have chosen. We're just going to give a little rant as to what we think and then we're going to open up the floor for some discussion if we agree, disagree, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I chose Gilmore Girls. I Googled because I just wanted to know what makes the show great. And it had to be timeless, it has to have an interesting plot, it has to create an impact on society, it needs to have relatable characters, and then it's fun to watch. That I kind of broke down my slides on what makes Gilmore Girls all of these characteristics. It has 7 seasons to start from 2000 to 2007, and then they revamped it A Year in the Life on Netflix in 2016, which hit like it got crazy numbers, and then now they're actually thinking about making a part 2 of that. Interesting plot. So it's about a life of a single mom with her daughter living in a small town, like the backstories of like her struggles, what she's done, all that good stuff. And then you also come to love like the characters and the town itself, the impact. So this is where I had to do a lot of like different research and figure out like the impact on society, because it really, first of all, it has strong female characters. Now, one thing that stood out to me is that it talks about a single mom working her way through life and not wanting to depend on her rich family. So she really worked hard, raised the daughter without a father figure, and it just really shows how strong Lorelai was throughout this whole thing. First of all, I wanted to point out, because this is something I found, is that even the theme song, which is so iconic, everybody loves the theme song, was actually sung with Carole King and her daughter. It also has an Asian main character, especially in the 2000s. Asian main characters were not as big as it was, now. Like, Jane was huge, and as Rory's best friend. Then also, I kind of had to put it in here, but the love for coffee, food, and small businesses. So a huge example of that would be Luke's, where he doesn't want to franchise his business. He's okay in a small town, being a coffee shop, and in all of the teen dramas we see, it's like they don't really touch on food and how much it brings them together. So we have Lorelai, Rory, Luke, Suki, Lane, and Paris, single mom, and really working towards that. You have Rory being a teenager and really working towards what her life is as a teenager, but also as a young adult, and trying to figure herself out. That's huge. You have Luke being an old school business owner, but dating Lorelai, who is super like all over the place, and him trying to adapt to her. And it was just such a cute dynamic. You have Suki, who is independent woman. She's a cook pursuing her career, which is huge, by the way, because that's hard. And then she's also being a mom. So a career while being a mom, huge. And then you have Paris, who's strong, independent, goal oriented, and these are all characters that are relatable across the spectrum. It's not just like one character in itself, and I love that. And lastly, it's fun to watch. So it has a fast dialogue. It's lighthearted. I love watch. It's a show that I can watch over and over and over again. And then also, I love the love interest. So there's always a discussion: who is Team Dean, who is Team Jess, and who is Team Logan. And then I love that they touch on like the warm community. Stars Hollow is, I want to be in a Stars Hollow. It's just so much fun. It's such a small little community that creates a family environment, and I love it. So that's why I think this is a great TV show. I think it is one of the better ones, and I just love it. So, and plus, yes, it's a teen show, but also I used to watch it with my mom, and she loves it. It's such a family show as well.
I'll bring those out more towards the end. What I will say is that Rory is a bitch and I hate her.
Yes.
Okay.
I started researching it for this video, and the thing with Rory is that, like, what teenager doesn't go through all of those, and a young adult? We make our mistakes. She's not a perfect character. And writers were talking about is that she is imperfect. And whenever you're going through a transition between the teenage years and the young adult years, you tend to like try to find yourself and make mistakes and not learn from them. And then you constantly make those mistakes until you hit a bump.
I actually don't think that it's timeless in that, like, when you watch it back, you're like, okay, Rory was a really terrible person, but you're right. Like, of course, like teen girls are always terrible, but they're also like likable to a certain point, in which I think Rory got to a point, it's just like, okay, she's just being a dumbass, and like here are all these like wonderful men. She's like a wonderful mother, wonderful grandparents, and she's kind of like screwing the pooch all the time. And she's so smart, and you just think she's so much better than what she is being right now, and it's kind of irritating.
I think that there are plenty of shows that show teenagers being teenagers and imperfect, but what this I think this series is not good at is writing redemption arcs. I think that there's a way to write someone imperfect, but what a redemption arc will do is show them learning and growing from these moments.
Welcome to my presentation, y'all. I did Netflix Elite, the telenovela America Wishes It wrote. First and foremost, it is a murder mystery meets some Marxism class struggle. So we've seen this done before. This show is not reinventing the wheel by any means. However, what I loved about this is that, yes, we love a good school uniform where we vicariously live through these rich elite teens. However, it brings this nuance of, well, there's some people who are not as privileged and not as well off who come into this school, and how do those dynamics work? The good thing about this murder mystery aspect of it is not dragged out. This is a very to the point show. There's like 8 to 10 episodes per season, and we find out who killed one of the protagonists in the first season, and I love that. Next, we have the flavor, okay? Look at the attractiveness of these actors first and foremost. We have some spicy white people. These are not your average Joes, okay? Furthermore, I think that these are more age-appropriate actors. I find a lot of teen shows have this problem of casting people who are too much older, and it kind of seems unrealistic. So let's talk depth. So with Elite, I think it is one of the more superior shows when it deals with LGBTQ representation. I don't know of any teen show that has dealt with bisexuality as well as this one has. And an example of that is Polo, where we truly see him struggling because of how he does not have knowledge about bisexuality, essentially, because he's just like, well, if I like this guy, does that mean I'm gay? But I also do have feelings for these girls and have a romantic connection with them. I thought that was really well done. In terms of shitty parents representation, so many teen shows love to brush off parents, and they're non-existent. Here we see the parents actively in every episode, and we see the parents being imperfect, but through loving these kids, which is sometimes something that we don't always consider, is that, yeah, parents could be crappy, but it's done out of love, but that doesn't excuse their problematic behavior. An example of this is with Yusuf. Next, we have when we become more than our socioeconomic status. And this is just showing that after the first season, we see more of a blend between friend groups, between relationships that kind of transcends class. So it's no longer as cliquey in terms of I could only date other elite rich people. I can only befriend my group. We see that expanding and them realizing as teens to kind of like disregard what they were taught and conditioned to think and be like, we're all people. We're all friends. You can fall in love with whoever you can fall in love with whoever you want, and you can befriend whoever. To conclude, because this is really short and sweet, the sell of the show is the well-written and well-realized and well-fleshed out female characters. Groundbreaking it is. Essentially, we have these women who come from various walks of life, essentially, and truly come through when it comes to character development. First off, we have Carla, who this is how you write an antagonist. This is how you write a woman who knows what she wants and she's doing it and is not controlled by anyone. So she is a villain through and through and comes to her own self-realization towards the end. Then we have Nadia, who is someone who comes from a very traditional religious background. And it is amazing seeing her growth through this show without ditching her religion and vilifying it. Who is written as that typical 2D mean girl character, if you will, and we see how she grows so much and is just so intelligent and so amazing by the end of it. And you don't have to love all of these female characters, but you have to acknowledge that they are on their own path as women and going to do amazing things. And I want the spin-offs for all of them because they're so great. But yes, that is the end of my presentation.
I didn't like how the Muslim culture was portrayed in that show. Where it came to the Muslim culture, a lot of the time it gets misunderstood. It didn't feel like they brought it justice in a way. I think it made it a problem. The parents being vilified a little bit, especially the dad and how he was presented was a little bit more on the exaggerated side. And it just didn't sit well with me.
That's a fair critique. Honestly, that's a fair critique. I don't have much to, like, I can't really speak on that too much. They do obviously have a responsibility to not make it seem like Yusuf is so in the wrong. But I think me as a mature person watching, I could say he is valid in that because I see some similarities with my mom, who's not in the same religion, but like her reactions would be similar. Because she would have those outbursts and lash out similar to Yusuf would, but not out of like hate and out of malice, but out of like, I love you so much and I'm just so opposed to that, right? Specifically with Omar's character.
Yusuf felt like Nadia was leaving her protective bubble. And once she leaves her protective bubble, he doesn't have control anymore. You know, and that was probably scaring him, and he was trying to get her to go back. But then she even spoke to him and said that he can't do that because then how is she supposed to grow as a person? You know, he was kind of wilding out at some point, but I still think that it just came down to like just a regular parent.
Okay, so my bid for best teen show is Friday Night Lights. And actually, like Rhea mentioned when we started, when you look up any article for best teen show, Friday Night Lights is always on every single list. And I will tell you why. If you weren't there to kind of watch it when it was happening, you might not get it, and I think it didn't have like a huge viewership base, but it was very, very loyal. It was similar to Veronica Mars, where it's like you just had these diehard fans that actually kept it going. Friday Night Lights for I think 5 seasons, and then it finally ended. So that was pretty good for a show who was like basically hanging on a thread each season, but every season was so freaking good. And they actually did it where I think it was like the first 3 seasons they had the original cast, but obviously it was realistic in that like they all graduated and the show still had to be about high school. So they basically like changed out the cast. It was a much more diverse cast because they switched schools basically. But to come back to the main points, I mean, this show is critically acclaimed. It's got a very attractive cast. I think it's probably one of the most authentic depictions of like high school and teen life. It's not like overwritten. It's not like overly dramatic. I mean, there was a few plot points that kind of went off the rails, but ultimately it is like a drama about sports, but it's a lot more than that. It's kind of what the sports do to bring people together. It's hopeful, it's inspirational, and it's really, really heartbreaking. And they have like the best couples ever on the show. It's like you see a lot of healthy relationships, a lot of unhealthy relationships. It's very funny. And I just love the way that they kind of went about making the show because when they made it, a lot of the cast was able to improv on set. So like a lot of the lines were basically stuff that the actors kind of made up based on their characters. I almost say that it didn't really fit well into like the TV mold because it was much more of like an inspirational kind of sports movie, and it has been made. Obviously it was a movie before it was a TV show, but it's very much in the vein of like that movie, or like Remember the Titans, very inspirational sports. But ultimately it's not about sports. It's kind of just about how the sport kind of brings everyone together and brings out the good and the bad. And yeah, I don't know, I just really, really like it.
I watched it recently and I was hooked. I
feel like it's also like a really timeless show too. Like I feel like I'm rewatching it right now and it just feels as good as it did when I watched it.
Hello everybody. My name is Ashley and I decided that I think that the defining show or the best show of our generation is Glee. First of all, I had to also include this picture because everyone had at least 2 people in their like class doing the stupid, am I doing it right, on Facebook with the bright colors in the background. People were making this their Facebook profile pictures to show the world just how cool they were. So here are my points as to why I think this is the best show. And I think I'll say this, I didn't watch the entire series front to back. I kind of was more exploring its cultural impact. So I first said representation station. It represented a lot of different people, a lot of different experiences, to the point where I remember some of the feedback was like, oh my God, he's like, it's starting to feel like a little bit like a PSA or something. Like it was, so it tried so hard and was so ambitious in all the people it was trying to speak to, that some people were like annoyed with it. Next, singing is cool. I'll get more into this, but I'm just saying more a cappella groups were happening at the time. More on this in a second. The cult following. Tumblr, when Tumblr was still a thing, was kind of insane. I didn't even have a Tumblr. All like my friends did. And they were like back and forth with all, especially like the Kurt and Blaine will they, won't they narrative. And then finally the Ryan Murphy takeover. Like Ryan Murphy is TV right now. And this is kind of what back in time. And I was like, okay, what are some 2019 shows a decade ago? And the plot points and the ways that representation and stuff were talked about back then were a little bit different. So it explicitly addressed social issues. This wasn't a half arc. It wasn't a cute side character development. It was explicitly done, like to the point where when I went to the Wikipedia page, it was within the first sentence. So Gossip Girl, XOXO Gossip Girl who, okay, rich white people whining about how hard will he love me, blah, 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 okay. Vampire Diaries, you mean the Twihards who grew up? Give me a break. One Tree Hill, aren't you the one from Cinderella Story? And I did like the British shows. I mean, Misfits and Skins were kind of, its thing, but again, weren't as big here. It was a little bit more niche, the people who were watching Misfits. I felt like I was cool for knowing where to, like, the websites to stream it back then. So racism, ableism, homophobia, sexual diversity, transphobia, teen pregnancies, all while hitting the two-step bop. Glee had it. So now I'm talking about the singing is cool point. I think that Pitch Perfect wouldn't happen if Glee didn't do what it did. I think that there was a time when I think a bunch of shows had like a musical episode. I think Scrubs was a musical for one episode because of the Glee impact. So I have here, these are 3 different years, 2009, 2011, and 2012, where it's talking about it hitting milestones and dominating the iTunes charts. So the songs that they were singing in the show were making like waves. That way, obviously, iTunes music is not a thing anymore. Time, the Glee Factor, a rise in amateur singing groups. So it's not just that the show is really popular, which it was, and that it and the music was really popular, which it was, but now people in their own communities, in their own schools. I went back to my elementary school, I think in 2010, and they started, my elementary school had like 100 kids. It was tiny, and they started a Glee club. And yes, then I said, okay, Ryan Murphy is king. So we see he had Popular, which was a good show, but got canceled. Nip/Tuck, it had a 7-year run, so I'm gonna guess that was popular too. But Glee really, I think, is what put him and kind of blew it out of the stratosphere. And we know, like, not every Ryan Murphy show is a hit, but he's everywhere on TV right now. Also, with Tumblr and the fan culture, I found this website, this article, and it said, it's not history, it's blood. A Glee fan remembers the Tumblr wars the show inspired.
Like, I didn't think Glee had a plot, to be honest. I was like,
well, use the plot as it's why I think it's as good of a show. I used its very real cultural impact that I think kind of reshaped the way that we do TV, or maybe pivot.
But was it for the best? Because do we really need another Riverdale musical episode? I don't think so.
When I heard Ashley had picked Glee, I was like, hey, so you're getting dragged and you might not make the final cut on my channel with this one. But I think it's just a bit too cuckoo. I think that it actually did a disservice to everything it was trying to accomplish, whether that be representation, whether that be songs, anything it tried doing. It was so counterproductive because they just like, it fell off the rails, which is attributed to Ryan Murphy's writing.
I watched it and I actually liked the show. It was weird. It was just like random, and it was like a comfort show.
I think now, you know, having more time passed, I think there are shows that might do it better, but I also don't think that I think this is one of the more important shows in that pivot and in kind of forwarding, you know, making diversity, you know, a very active project, and representation a very active project.
In humble opposition that it was actually High School Musical that brought back musicals. As I really, really, really tried to rewatch Glee because I literally couldn't get past like the second episode because it was so cringy for me to watch. Will Schuester should be dead. Like, I don't know why he was allowed to.
Why is he so close to his students?
Why is he so close to his students? He should not be able to operate within, you know, at least like 10 blocks of that school. Like, I don't even know. It was just like very confusing to me. And the show is cursed. Like, I don't know what happened on that show, but it just seems like bad vibes to me.
Like a deal was made.
A deal was made for number one on iTunes, I think.
Yeah. Blueprint. Buffy Summers is the blueprint of everything you love on TV. The TV Tropes website is literally based off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. How does one make a show of vampires cool, funny, and heartwarming without being completely cheesy? Don't ask Stephanie Meyer and Julie Plec because they for sure do not know. I will drag them. I don't care. Buffy's impact, she basically set forth all the future like heroine who think inspired Veronica Mars. The gifts I put on my slideshow alone, look at her. She's hilarious. She's funny. She's quirky. She had the cutest outfits and she was fighting demons. Like, she was the coolest person ever. Like, watching her on TV was like, oh, I want to be her. Buffy set the blueprint for many things. Like, obviously people did love triangles before, but it was more so rare for like vampire love triangles. And the good and the bad. There was always a good brother and a bad brother and whatever. And it just kind of moved forward and everybody was picking teams and whatnot. Angel and Spike was definitely the first Team Jacob, Team Edward going on. Before, in the 90s, TV shows used to be kind of like, they would air an episode and it wouldn't have anything to do with what happened in the episode before. It would just be like a whole new episode. Buffy was the first TV show to do like an actual plot line per season and have a big bad at the end of the season. They made her a very relatable character too. They made her kind of like, she was very open about the fact that, yeah, she was supposed to be the vampire slayer, but she's 16. She wants to go on dates. She wants to hang out with her friends. Like, this isn't fair. Like, you know, she didn't ask for any of this to happen to her. And it just made me love her and appreciate the character even more. And if you watch it now, it kind of feels like it's something you've already seen before because people are taking from it. I have read a lot of interviews where people have said that they were inspired from Buffy with where their show was going. The Vampire Diaries is one of them. I just think that Buffy is the best show because your favorite showrunners do too. Anyways. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. There is no denying the impact of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think it was so fun and so cool. I think even her impact goes beyond TV shows. I almost wonder how many of these like dystopian young adult books kind of pull some inspiration from the character Buffy herself. Like the Hunger Games, even like City of Bones, maybe, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely the impact is there.
So like a proper LGBTQ relationship with Tara and Willow. And that was like a really big thing at the time. And I remember, because like myself, when I first watching it, it was the first time that I had even seen it on TV. So it was just like, whoa.
Such a show that's ahead of its time. Also, I think that maybe the reason why it doesn't have as wide of a reach for maybe among our generation is because it's a little bit earlier, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know its reach for like when it was on air, like how it was then, but I've only heard that it's ahead of its time, that it has like a really badass like main lead heroine in a new way, and in a way where she has more, they give her more agency almost.
Yeah.
And a lot of like the feministy circles that I kind of tune into really enjoy the show. So I want
Okay, anyways, let's wrap this up because we're not at the 2-hour mark yet, Sarah. We're a bit under it by a few minutes. But thank you all so much for joining me, and thank you everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please comment below what shows that we did not touch on that you think would be the teen show of this generation. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.